Part 2 begins from where the doctor noticed Sullivan's distress and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Please, sir, don't make any sudden movements. I understand what you're feeling, but we need you to stabilize for the procedure. Breathe deeply," advised the doctor as Sullivan tried to control his breathing, his eyes still filled with desperate determination. "Doctor, I'll sign whatever is necessary. There's no time. She needs that kidney, and I'm willing to do this. I won't forgive myself if I don't," he affirmed, taking the clipboard the doctor offered him with a trembling hand. Sullivan signed the document authorizing the surgery, his determination evident in every movement, even as weakness threatened to overtake him. "I promised her. I promised to save some kids, and this starts with Ivy. She's my responsibility now," he murmured, gripping the clipboard tightly before handing it back to the doctor. The doctor nodded, acknowledging that the decision had been made and there was no turning back. As Sullivan was prepared for surgery, he felt the pressure in his chest increasing, as if his heart was resisting his will. He felt weak, but the image of Ivy, so frail and fighting for her life, was all he needed to keep going. "Just a little longer, heart. I just need you to hold on until she's safe," he thought, trying to focus on his breathing. With the preparations advancing, Sullivan was taken to the operating room, where the team was rushing to adjust the equipment and prepare the surgical center. The doctor approached him as a nurse made the final preparations. "Mr. Sullivan, there's still time to back out. This surgery is an extreme risk for you," the doctor said one last time, hoping he would reconsider. Sullivan looked him in the eye, unwavering. "Doctor, understand, this isn't just a choice. I need to do this. It's the only way to keep my promise," he replied firmly. The doctor sighed but respected the decision, signaling for the team to begin. However, as soon as the final preparations were made, Sullivan felt an intense pain in his chest. The monitor next to him started beeping, and the medical team exchanged alarmed looks. "Mr. Sullivan, stay calm. Breathe slowly. Your heart is showing signs of failure," warned the doctor, trying to control the situation. Sullivan gritted his teeth, trying to ignore the pain and focus on his goal. "Please, just a little longer," he murmured, fighting against his own body that seemed ready to give up. The pain intensified, and he felt his vision darkening as the monitor sounded an alarm, indicating his heart was failing. The shrill, continuous sound cut through the silence in the room, filling it with relentless urgency. The chief physician approached, placing a firm hand on Sullivan's shoulder, trying to get his attention. "Sir, stop now. Your heart is giving out. You need to calm down immediately. If you keep forcing it, it may not hold up," said the doctor, his voice laden with a seriousness that left no doubt. Sullivan only clenched his teeth, determined to ignore his body's betrayal. His breathing was heavy, his chest compressed in excruciating pain, but he refused to give up. "I just a little more. I need to do this for her," he muttered, his half-open eyes struggling to maintain consciousness as it threatened to slip away. For Sullivan, every lost second felt like a threat to Ivy's future. His sacrifice seemed small in the face of the girl's life, yet the pain in his chest only intensified, tightening like a vice, robbing him of breath and strength. His vision wavered, the world blurring as he tried to focus on a point in the ceiling above, a single anchor amid the chaos. The doctor observed Sullivan's evident agony, understanding that he was pushing himself beyond his limits. "He's pushing too hard. We can't risk losing another patient today," the doctor thought, exchanging a determined look with his team. The chief doctor gave a silent signal, and immediately they began to disconnect the devices attached to Sullivan to stop the kidney donation surgery. "Remove the patient from the room. He needs to be stabilized before any procedure," ordered the doctor, his voice calm but firm. Two nurses approached, gently holding Sullivan's arms. He tried to resist, even though his strength was nearly depleted. "No, I can't stop now. We need to continue the surgery." "She needs me," he muttered, his voice punctuated by the pain piercing his chest. As he was removed from the operating room, Sullivan felt fragile and helpless, his half-closed eyes barely able to focus on the passing ceiling tiles above him. Each light and shadow intensified the feeling that time was slipping away. "Please, just a little more," he thought, his mind torn between his determination to continue and the harsh reality of his failing body. The medical team carefully placed him in a wheelchair, adjusting his monitors to ensure stability. A nurse checked his vital signs closely, while the lead doctor knelt beside him, maintaining eye contact. "Mr. Sullivan, you're in critical condition. We need to stabilize your heart before attempting any surgery. This is essential," the doctor explained, his voice grave. Sullivan took a deep breath, fighting to steady his erratic heartbeat, though he felt on the verge of collapse. "It doesn't matter, doctor. Her life is hanging by a thread. You don't understand what this means to me," he whispered, his voice fading with each effort. The doctor held Sullivan's arm, trying to offer some stability in the tense situation. "I understand, sir, but you also need to survive for the donation to happen. We can't risk everything at once." Sullivan lowered his gaze, his eyes brimming with tears, the image of Ivy anchored in his mind. He tried to control his breathing, but despair crept in, the feeling of helplessness consuming him. "She needs me, doctor. She needs to live. How can I forgive myself if I fail her now?" The doctor watched, recognizing the immense effort Sullivan was making to stay calm, but knowing his strength was waning. The nurse adjusted Sullivan's oxygen, attempting to stabilize his breathing, while the doctor closely monitored his vitals. "What you need to understand," the doctor continued, "is that this surgery will only be possible if your heart is strong enough. You must calm down and avoid overloading yourself, or you won't be able to save Ivy." Sullivan nodded slowly, absorbing the cold, hard reality. He closed his eyes, trying to muster whatever strength he had left, as if willing his heart to calm down so he could continue. "Then do it quickly. Just stabilize me. I'll do my best to stay calm. I just need you to help me do what I need to do," he murmured, gripping the arms of the chair, his face a portrait of pain and determination. The doctor sighed, sensing Sullivan's unwavering resolve. "We'll take care of you and stabilize your heart, but you need to cooperate. We need you to stay calm," he said, signaling the nurse to administer a light sedative to slow Sullivan's heart rate. Sullivan hesitated but soon felt the medication's effect, a gentle numbness relieving the excruciating pain in his chest. He closed his eyes, the weight of each breath pressing upon him as he tried to convince himself it was just a pause, that soon he would be strong enough to do what was necessary. "Please, let this pain pass quickly," he thought, his face marked by tension and uncertainty. He knew every minute out here could mean one less minute for Ivy, but he had no choice but to yield. After several minutes, Sullivan's heart rate began to stabilize, the monitor's alarming tones fading. The doctor watched closely, relieved to see the beats and blood pressure finally under control. "You need to keep this up. When you're stable enough, we'll try again," the doctor informed him. Sullivan nodded, though his expression remained tense. Sometime later, Sullivan sat in a chair in the hospital hallway, awaiting the moment to return to surgery. He observed the movement of nurses and doctors, the murmurs of families echoing through the halls, each moment pressing upon him with an endless weight. His thoughts remained fixed on Ivy, imagining what would happen if everything went wrong. He requested paper and a pen from a nearby nurse. As he held the pen, tears began to slip down his face. In the letter, Sullivan poured out everything he had never expressed, even to himself, the anguish, the promises that had now become his life's purpose. "If I don't come back, at least let her know my promise was true," he whispered, finishing the letter with a heavy sigh. Carefully folding the paper, he handed it to the nurse beside him, asking for it to be delivered to his lawyer. With trembling hands, Sullivan picked up a phone and dialed his lawyer's number. The call was brief, each response punctuated with the unspoken weight of farewell. He gave his instructions and hung up, feeling the finality of his decision settle over him. "It's done. Now all I can do is trust that she'll be okay," he murmured, letting the phone slip from his hand. Moments later, a nurse appeared in the hallway, informing him that the medical team was ready. Sullivan nodded, gathering his strength, and stood up. Before leaving, he asked, "Can I see her?" "Just for a moment. I promise I won't take long." The nurse led him to Ivy's room. There, he approached her bed, his heart racing with each step. The world around him faded, leaving only the soft sound of her breathing. When he reached her side, he gently held her hand, hoping to pass on whatever courage he had left. Ivy's eyes slowly opened, and upon seeing him, she gave a faint smile. I don't want you to die, she whispered, her voice low, almost pleading. Sullivan's heart ached at her words, and he forced a reassuring smile. Hey, I'll be fine. We'll do this together, and soon we'll be out of here, he said, trying to convince himself as much as her. He knew he might not survive, but he couldn't let her be afraid. Just trust me, little one. I promise I'll do whatever it takes, he said, squeezing her hand gently. Shortly after, Sullivan was led back to the operating room, his face pale, his features exhausted, but his eyes still held a glimmer of determination. He knew this was his last chance to do something for Ivy, and he resolved to stay calm. As the initial procedures began, the doctors around him adjusted instruments and prepared the equipment, each movement executed with careful precision. The tension in the room was unmistakable, with everyone aware that the margin for error was practically non-existent. In Ivy's room, doctors closely monitored her fragile vitals. She's getting worse. We don't have much time, warned one of the doctors, adjusting her artificial respiration. The surgery began in silence, only the hum of equipment filling the room. Sullivan's breathing was labored, even under sedation, as the doctors made the first incision to access the kidney. The atmosphere was heavy with urgency, each movement had to be precise. We'll need to move faster. His heart isn't responding well, murmured the chief surgeon, eyeing the monitor's worrying signs. Suddenly, Sullivan's heart began to falter, the monitor's irregular beeping growing louder. He's going into arrhythmia. We need to stabilize his heart before continuing, warned the anesthetist. The team quickly administered medication, but Sullivan's heart remained weak, its beat erratic. Hold on, Mr. Sullivan, just a little more, fought the doctor, adjusting instruments while watching the monitor with trepidation. In Ivy's room, her condition was also deteriorating rapidly. Her heart struggled, her breathing sustained solely by the machines. If we don't get the kidney soon, she won't make it, said one of the doctors, his voice shaking. Back in Sullivan's operating room, the medical team managed to extract the kidney, but as soon as it was removed, Sullivan's heart began to fail once more. The monitor emitted a sharp alarm, and his heart rate plummeted. He's crashing, shouted the doctor as the team scrambled to resuscitate him. They activated the defibrillators, but Sullivan's body barely responded, as if he were on the brink of surrender. We can't lose him now. He's her only hope, muttered the head doctor, determined to fight until the last. After a final effort, Sullivan's heart beat again, weak but steady. The doctor sighed, aware that every second now mattered more than ever. Meanwhile, in Ivy's room, the team received Sullivan's kidney and immediately began the transplant. Her body was at its limit, but they worked with precision, hoping to stabilize the organ and restore her life. However, partway through the transplant, Ivy's body began to show signs of rejection. Her heart weakened, and the monitor sounded a warning. Her heart is failing. We need to stabilize her, one of the doctors said urgently. In Sullivan's room, his heart began to struggle again, his pulse growing faint. The continuous alarms signaled the worsening situation. We're losing him, whispered the anesthetist, watching the monitor with dread. Back in Ivy's room, the doctors battled against time, her weak body barely holding on. And as Sullivan's life flickered, both teams pushed forward with every ounce of skill and precision they possessed, knowing that both lives hung on the edge of fate. The incessant alarms created a symphony of despair that echoed down the hospital corridors. In a moment of utter agony, both Sullivan's and Ivy's monitors began to fail, their vital signs dropping in synchrony, as if their lives were bound together. In a final attempt to endure, the atmosphere in the surgical centers was unbearably tense, each team fighting with everything they had to keep both Sullivan and Ivy alive. In Sullivan's operating room, his heart monitor emitted critical signals, each beat seeming like a countdown. His weakened heart, strained by both the surgery and his existing condition, showed signs of giving out. The chief physician, face drawn with desperation, gave a sharp order: prepare the defibrillator. We're going to try to resuscitate him. The team moved quickly, adjusting the equipment for one final chance to bring Sullivan back. In the next room, the doctors were completing Ivy's kidney transplant, carefully connecting the organ to her circulatory system. Yet Ivy's blood pressure fluctuated, her body still in shock from the ordeal. We need to stabilize her. There's still a risk of rejection, one of the doctors commented, exchanging worried glances with the others. In Sullivan's room, the defibrillator sent a powerful jolt through his body, causing it to spasm, but the monitor remained erratic. The doctor, sweat dripping down his face, adjusted the defibrillator for another attempt, his voice almost pleading, "Come on, Mr. Sullivan, you can still fight." The third shock brought a faint response, a weak heartbeat. It was a small victory, but the anesthetist whispered, "He's still very unstable. We need a miracle for him to pull through." Meanwhile, Ivy's vital signs began to show slow signs of recovery. Her blood pressure stabilized, and her weak heartbeat grew steadier. The doctors in her room sighed with cautious relief. "She's starting to respond. Let's increase the medication to help her body accept the new kidney," the chief physician suggested, monitoring her carefully. Each beat of her heart felt like a step out of the abyss. But just as Ivy showed signs of hope, Sullivan's heart gave out once again. The monitor in his room emitted the dreaded flatline tone. The chief physician leaned over him, defibrillator ready, and each jolt sent his body into spasm, but the line on the monitor remained flat. "We can't lose him now," the doctor muttered, desperation lacing his voice. They tried shock after shock, yet each attempt grew weaker. The anesthetist shook his head, his expression one of resignation. "Cardiac activity is at the limit. I don't think he'll make it," he said softly. The chief physician closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the inevitable as he murmured, "Please, Mr. Sullivan, fight just a little longer." But the monitor remained silent, a flat line signaling the end. With a heavy heart, he finally turned to his team. Mr. Sullivan didn't make it. In Ivy's room, her eyes flooded open, her face pale but now showing a faint hint of color. The doctor leaned in gently. "Ivy, can you hear us?" he asked, and she slowly nodded, still groggy but alert. "You made it, dear. You're a fighter," he murmured with a small, comforting smile. Ivy tried to speak, her lips trembling slightly, but before she could ask about Sullivan, a nurse entered, whispering urgently to the doctor. Ivy noticed the sudden silence and the anguished look on the doctors' faces, and her heart raced with an unsettling dread. "Sullivan, where is he?" she whispered, her voice faint but urgent. The doctor took a deep breath and then approached her bedside. "Ivy, Mr. Sullivan made a great sacrifice for you," he began, his tone soft but strained. "He donated his kidney so you could have a chance to survive." The words struck Ivy with a surreal sense of shock, as if she were in a dream. As the doctor's words settled, a growing sense of panic overwhelmed her. "But, and him? He's okay, isn't he?" Her voice trembled, her eyes filling with tears. The doctor hesitated, and Ivy's heart sank further. "Sullivan, he's alive, isn't he?" He had to be okay," she continued, her voice faltering as the reality of the doctor's silence weighed on her. The doctor lowered his gaze, confirming her worst fear. A sharp, unbearable pain ripped through Ivy's heart, stealing her breath. He's gone, isn't he?" she whispered, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her face. She tried to lift her hand, but her arms were too weak, paralyzed by the weight of her sorrow. "He gave his life for me." The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his voice filled with compassion. "He wanted you to live, Ivy. He made this decision knowing it was the only way to give you a new chance." Ivy shook her head, her sobs breaking through her weakened body. "No, he couldn't. I never wanted that. I just wanted him to be okay, to stay by my side." Her voice trembled, each word coming out choked by the grief threatening to consume her. "He shouldn't have done this." She lay there, consumed by an agony too deep for words, as the realization of his sacrifice took hold. The weight of Sullivan's final promise pressed upon her heart, and though her body had received new life, it felt as if her spirit was breaking under the weight of what he had given up. The monitors around Ivy began to beep in irregular patterns, alerting the medical team to the worsening severity of her condition. Her breathing quickened, and her heart rate climbed, mirroring the intensity of her emotional breakdown. The doctor approached her gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder in an attempt to calm her down, but Ivy was inconsolable. "I didn't want this," she sobbed, her voice frail yet laced with raw pain. "I saw him before the surgery. I saw it in his eyes. He cared about me. It's been so long since anyone cared. I never asked him to sacrifice himself for me. Her voice trembled, and tears streamed down her face as her broken words echoed in the room. The monitor's beeping grew louder, each peak of her heartbeat reflecting the depth of her suffering. The doctor glanced at the nurse, who immediately adjusted the oxygen flow and prepared a dose of sedative to try and bring Ivy's condition under control. "Ivy, you need to breathe slowly," the doctor urged gently, his voice low and soothing. "I know it hurts, but you need to calm down. He did this so you could live. He believed in your strength, and he wouldn't want to see you suffering like this." But Ivy couldn't be consoled. She shook her head, her sobs breaking through her ragged breaths. "I just wanted him to live. He promised he'd be okay. He couldn't leave me like this." Her voice was barely a whisper, broken by pain and despair. Every memory of Sullivan felt like a new wound, and the guilt she felt pulled her deeper into a seemingly inescapable abyss. Why did he have to do this? "I'm not worth it." He should have thought about himself. "I'm just a nobody, a beggar." He was important. She gripped the hospital sheet with trembling fingers, her tear-streaked face contorted in anguish. "I'll never be able to live knowing he's gone because of me." The doctors watched helplessly as Ivy's condition continued to decline. Her vital signs slipped lower with each minute, and the medical team around her scrambled to stabilize her. One of the nurses whispered urgently, "She's in critical condition. We need to bring her vitals under control before this spirals further." Another nurse attempted to soothe Ivy with gentle touches on her arm, but Ivy seemed unreachable, clinging tightly to the sheets as though they could somehow ground her in a world that had just lost its only anchor. "He was the only person who cared, who really cared," she choked out, her sobs racking her frail body. "And now he's gone because of me." Her words were broken, coming between breaths that grew shallower and more frantic. "I never asked for this. I just wanted someone who wouldn't abandon me," she murmured, her voice growing faint as her eyes drifted shut, consumed by the weight of exhaustion and sorrow. The doctor exchanged a tense look with the team. Ivy's intense grief was not only breaking her spirit but was now pushing her already weakened body toward kidney rejection. He turned to the nurses, his voice steady but grave. "We need more immunological support. Her body is showing signs of rejecting the kidney, and her emotional state is only worsening the situation." But Ivy, lost in her pain, remained unaware of the team's efforts around her. Her mind lingered on the last image she had of Sullivan, his gentle smile, the way he looked at her with hope. "He was my only chance to have someone who cared," she murmured, her voice a broken whisper as tears streamed down her face. Meanwhile, in the adjoining operating room, Sullivan's monitor displayed a continuous flatline, signaling the end. The medical team exchanged somber glances, absorbing the loss of the man who had sacrificed himself for another's life. One of the doctors, his face etched with exhaustion and sorrow, removed his gloves and, in a trembling voice, announced, "Time of death, 3:42 p.m. A silence hung heavy in the room, a silent mourning for the man who had given everything for a child in need. For the team, Sullivan had become more than just a patient, he had become a symbol of profound selflessness. The lead doctor, who had led the entire procedure, paused, staring at Sullivan's still form. He struggled to comprehend how a heart that had shown such resilience had finally reached its limit. In Ivy's room, as she lay weakened, her mind fractured by grief, the memory of Sullivan's face remained vivid. Though her body had been given a new chance at life, her heart felt shattered, wrestling with the guilt and sorrow of the sacrifice he had made. The room quieted as her cries subsided, but her silent grief continued, her life irrevocably intertwined with the loss of the only person who had ever truly cared. The doctor's voice was barely audible as he placed his hands firmly on Sullivan's chest. "I can't accept this. This man did all this to save a street kid. He has a strong heart. He has to have." His gaze hardened, and his hands moved with precision over Sullivan's chest, beginning chest compressions. The rest of the team watched in silence, caught between shock and concern, some wondering if the doctor had lost his grip on reality. "I'm not giving up on him now, not after all this," the doctor exclaimed, his voice filled with a fierce resolve they hadn't seen before. The rhythmic sound of his manual compressions filled the otherwise silent room. One of the nurses stepped forward, her voice heavy with concern. "Doctor, please, he's gone. Maybe it's time to stop. But the doctor, unwavering, continued the compressions, each one a testament to his determination. You don't understand. This man went beyond what anyone else would do. He's still here, I know it, he spoke with an intensity that silenced further objections, his voice trembling as he maintained the compressions. Time passed, and the team's anxiety grew as they watched the doctor defy both logic and protocol, each press of his hand seeming like a struggle to bring Sullivan back. Finally, in a moment of utter desperation, the doctor closed his eyes and whispered a prayer, the words spilling out in a low, hoarse voice. Lord, I don't remember the last time I did this. I'm a skeptic, and my faith is in medicine, but if there's a chance, any chance, this man deserves it. He fought with everything he had. He has to come back. Please, help me save him. With his head bowed, he resumed the compressions, his hands firm, his faith unwavering. The team around him watched, some crossing their arms, others averting their gazes, feeling as if they were witnessing something beyond medicine. And then, after seconds that felt like hours, a faint beat pierced the silence. The monitor showed a slight, almost imperceptible blip, but it was real. Sullivan's heart was beating again, faint but there. The doctor looked up in disbelief, his face a mix of relief and awe. He's back. He's back, he whispered, scarcely able to believe it. The nurses exhaled sighs of relief, and the team quickly moved to stabilize Sullivan. Though his heartbeat returned, Sullivan remained in a delicate state, teetering between life and death. The lead doctor composed himself, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He's alive, but he still needs intensive care. As the team prepared to transfer Sullivan to the ICU, a reverent silence filled the room. They had all witnessed something extraordinary. Thank you, the doctor murmured softly, a silent prayer of gratitude. In the ICU, a nurse hurried to Ivy's bedside. She leaned down, gently squeezing Ivy's hand. Ivy, we have something to tell you, she began, her voice tired yet filled with a hint of joy. Ivy, fragile and weak, looked up, her eyes questioning, hopeful. Sullivan, he survived. The doctor was able to revive him, the nurse whispered, her tone both soft and deeply meaningful. Ivy's eyes widened, her heart leaping as if life itself had returned to her in that instant. He's alive? She asked, her voice trembling as she searched the nurse's face for reassurance. The nurse nodded, a gentle smile gracing her face. Yes, Ivy, it was a true miracle. She watched Ivy's expression transform from shock to profound relief, though she knew Ivy was aware of the severity of Sullivan's condition. He did it for you, dear. He fought until the very last moment. Tears of relief and gratitude filled Ivy's eyes. I need to see him. I need to be by his side, she murmured, her voice weak yet resolute. The nurse hesitated, explaining that both of their conditions were still fragile and they needed rest, but Ivy's determined gaze made her reconsider. Please, he gave everything for me. I need to be there for him, Ivy insisted, her voice carrying a strength that was hard to refuse. Moved by Ivy's devotion, the nurse nodded and, with the help of another nurse, they carefully prepared Ivy for a brief visit. As they rolled her down the hallway towards Sullivan's room, Ivy's heart raced with anticipation. When the doors opened and she saw him lying there, pale and connected to machines, a mix of gratitude and sorrow filled her heart. Gently, she reached for his hand, her voice a soft whisper. You gave me life, but I cannot accept that you leave, she murmured, her eyes fixed on him as if willing him to fight just a little longer. Sullivan lay still and silent, his breathing assisted by machines, yet Ivy sensed an unseen struggle within him. The nurse adjusted Ivy's position and offered a few comforting words. He's in a coma, but there is hope. Mr. Sullivan overcame the impossible once before, and who knows, he might do it again. Ivy nodded, gripping his hand tightly. I know you're there, and I know you'll come back, she whispered, tears slipping down her face as she silently pleaded for his recovery. Days passed, and as Ivy regained enough strength to sit by Sullivan's bedside, she remained devoted. The ICU was quiet, save for the steady beeps of the monitors tracking Sullivan's fragile recovery. Each day, Ivy would pull out a book she had found in the hospital, a simple volume of stories, and read to him, hoping her voice might reach him through the fog of his coma. One afternoon, she opened the book to a story about a lost bird, her voice soft but steady. This one is about a little bird who got lost from his mother. She adjusted her seat, getting closer, as if she could will her voice to bridge the gap between their worlds. He flew so high that he ended up getting lost, but a kind lady found him and fed him until he could fly again. Ivy read, her voice soft as she glanced over at Sullivan's peaceful face. She paused, placing her hand on his, her eyes searching his for any sign of awareness. That's how I felt. You helped me fly when I had no strength left. Closing the book, Ivy held his hand, feeling the warmth that still remained. She spoke with a gentle determination, almost as if she expected him to respond. You know, Sullivan, I've been planning all the places we'll go when you wake up. There's a beautiful park nearby. I want to take you there, show it to you my way, she smiled, imagining the day they would walk through the park together. Each day, she returned to his side, sharing her dreams and creating a life for the two of them. When you wake up, I'll cook for you. Real homemade soup. My mother used to say I was a good cook. I promise it'll be the best soup you've ever had, she said, gently stroking his hand, her voice filled with quiet conviction. She filled their silent moments with stories of the future, whispering her hopes and promises. We'll go to the park and sit on the nicest bench, watching the sunset together. I'll even tell you stories while you rest, and then we'll share popcorn. I'll show you the joy of simple things. In between readings, Ivy glanced at the monitor, hoping to see any sign of change, any flicker of improvement. Each steady beat became a quiet prayer. I think you're just resting, getting your strength back. I don't believe you'll stay here for years. I believe in you, she whispered, her voice brimming with unwavering faith. One day, leaning in close, Ivy confided, You know, Sullivan, I never had anyone who believed in me the way you did. You saw me, really saw me, not just some beggar girl. Her voice trembled, but she steadied herself, squeezing his hand gently. I'm going to keep believing in you, just like you did for me. So you better wake up soon, okay? We've got too many plans for you to sleep through them all. The ICU remained a quiet sanctuary, the soft hum of machines blending with Ivy's gentle voice as she continued her vigil. The nurses, moved by her dedication, often lingered nearby, offering small gestures of comfort, a glass of water, a blanket, or a kind word. One nurse, named Clara, had grown particularly fond of Ivy. You're a strong one, Ivy, Clara said one evening, adjusting Sullivan's fore. He's lucky to have you here, fighting for him. Ivy smiled faintly, her eyes never leaving Sullivan's face. I'm the lucky one. He gave me a chance to live. I just want to give him a reason to keep fighting. Clara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of their story. She had seen many patients come and go, but the bond between Ivy and Sullivan was unlike anything she'd witnessed. As the days turned into weeks, Ivy's health slowly improved. The transplant had taken, and her body was adapting to the new kidney, though the doctors warned her to take it easy. Despite their advice, Ivy refused to leave Sullivan's side for long, only stepping away for brief rests or medical checkups. Her presence became a constant in the ICU, her voice a soft thread weaving through the sterile silence. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the hospital window, Ivy noticed a slight change. Sullivan's fingers twitched faintly under her touch. Her heart leapt, and she leaned closer, her voice urgent but soft. Sullivan? Can you hear me? It's Ivy. I'm right here. She watched his face intently, searching for any sign of response, but his eyes remained closed, his breathing steady but unchanged. Disappointment tugged at her, but she refused to let it take hold. That's okay, she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. You're trying. I know you are. I'll wait as long as it takes. She pulled out the book again, flipping to a new story about a sailor who braved a storm to find his way home. As she read, her voice carried a quiet strength, each word a lifeline cast into the unknown. The sailor never gave up, even when the waves were taller than his ship. He knew home was waiting, and that kept him going. She paused, her eyes flickering to Sullivan's face. You're like that sailor, Sullivan. You've got a home waiting for you right here with me. Later that day, the lead doctor, Dr. Harris, stopped by during his rounds. He checked Sullivan's chart, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the latest test results. Ivy watched him anxiously, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Any changes, doctor? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Harris sighed, setting the chart down. His vitals are stable, Ivy, but there's no significant neurological improvement yet. His brain went through a lot during the surgery, and comas like this, they can take time. Or they might not change at all. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You need to be prepared for the possibility that he may not wake up. Ivy's chest tightened, but she shook her head firmly. He will. I know he will. He fought too hard to just stop. Her voice was steady, her eyes blazing with determination. Dr. Harris studied her for a moment, then offered a small nod, respecting her unwavering faith. Keep talking to him, he said gently. There's evidence that familiar voices can help coma patients. You're doing more for him than you might realize. Encouraged by the doctor's words, Ivy redoubled her efforts. She shared stories, sang soft lullabies her mother had taught her, and even recounted the events of that fateful day in the square, as if reliving it might stir something in him. You didn't even see that bus coming, she said one afternoon, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You were so lost in your world. I couldn't let you get hurt. And now you're stuck with me, listening to all my chatter. As the weeks stretched on, Ivy's presence began to have an effect on others in the hospital. The staff, inspired by her resilience, started a small collection to ensure she had food and clothes, and a comfortable place to rest. Even some of the other patients, touched by her story, sent notes of encouragement, slipped under the door of Sullivan's room or handed to her by nurses. One note, written in a child's hand, read, "Thank you for not giving up. You're like a hero." Ivy kept these messages close, tucking them into the pages of her book, a reminder that her hope wasn't hers alone. One evening, as winter's chill seeped into the hospital, Ivy sat curled up in her chair beside Sullivan's bed, wrapped in a blanket Clara had brought. She was reading a poem about hope, her voice soft and melodic, when she felt another faint movement, a slight pressure against her hand. Her heart raced, and she set the book down, leaning close. Sullivan? Was that you? Please, do it again, she whispered, her eyes fixed on his hand. She held her breath, waiting, and after a moment, his fingers curled ever so slightly around hers. Tears sprang to her eyes, and she called for Clara, who hurried over. He moved. His hand, he squeezed mine. Ivy exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. Clara checked Sullivan's monitors, her expression cautious but hopeful. It's a good sign, Ivy. It could mean he's starting to stimuli. Keep talking to him, let's let him know you're here. She gave Ivy an encouraging smile before stepping out to notify Dr. Harris. From that day on, the faint signs of progress continued. Sullivan's movements grew stronger, slight twitches of his fingers, a subtle shift in of his head, a soft murmur that might have been a word. Ivy clung to each moment, her hope burning brighter with every small victory. She began to share stories of the world outside, describing the snow falling in the square, the children there laughing as they played, and the promise of spring. When you wake up, we'll go see the flowers bloom, she said one day, her voice filled with longing. You'll love how the park smells after the snow melts. One quiet morning, as Ivy sat by his side, reading a tale about a knight who saved a village, she felt a change in the air. The room seemed lighter, as if the weight of their shared ordeal had shifted. She glanced at Sullivan and saw his eyelids flutter. Her heart stopped, her voice faltering mid-sentence. Sullivan? She whispered, leaning closer, her hand tightening around his. Slowly, his eyes opened, bleary and unfocused, yet unmistakably alive. Ivy gasped, tears streaming down her face as she laughed through her sobs. You're back, she whispered, her voice breaking. You came back to me. Sullivan's gaze drifted toward her, his expression dazed but softening as he seemed to recognize her voice. His lips parted, and though no sound came at first, Ivy saw the effort in his eyes, the spark of life she'd been praying for. Clara rushed in, alerted by the change in the monitors, and quickly checked Sullivan's vitals. He's responding, she said, her voice filled with awe. Ivy, he's waking up. She called for Dr. Harris, who arrived moments later, his face lighting up as he confirmed the signs of recovery. This is incredible, he murmured, checking Sullivan's pupils and reflexes. he's showing clear signs of activity. It's a step forward. Ivy couldn't take her eyes off Sullivan, her heart swelling with gratitude. She leaned close, whispering, "I knew you'd fight." "I knew it." Sullivan's hand tightened slightly around hers, a faint acknowledgement that sent warmth flooding through her. Though he couldn't yet speak, his eyes held hers, conveying a silent promise that he was still there, still fighting. Over the next few days, Sullivan's recovery gained momentum. He began to respond more consistently, squeezing Ivy's hand, tracking her movements with his eyes, and even managing a faint smile when she read to him. Ivy never left his side, her presence a constant source of strength. She continued her stories, her dreams of their future, filling the room with hope. One afternoon, as Ivy recounted a memory of her mother teaching her to braid flowers into crowns, Sullivan's voice broke through, hoarse and barely audible. "Ivy," he rasped, his eyes fixed on her. Ivy froze, her heart soaring as she leaned closer. "I'm here," she whispered, tears spilling over. "I'm right here." He struggled to speak, each word a monumental effort. "You saved me, too." Ivy shook her head, her voice choked with emotion. "No, you saved me first. You gave me everything." Sullivan's lips curved into a faint smile, his eyes shining with something deeper than words could express. "We saved each other," he murmured, his voice fading as exhaustion took hold. Ivy held his hand tightly, her heart full. "Yeah," she whispered, her smile radiant through her tears. "We did." As Sullivan's strength slowly returned, Ivy remained his anchor, guiding him through the slow, arduous process of recovery. The hospital staff marveled at their bond, a testament to the power of selflessness and love. Dr. Harris, reflecting on their journey, confided to Clara one day, "I've seen miracles in medicine, but this is something else." They gave each other a reason to live. Weeks later, Sullivan was strong enough to sit up, and Ivy wheeled him to the hospital's small garden, where the first signs of spring were emerging. They sat together on a bench, the air crisp with the promise of new beginnings. Ivy tucked a blanket around Sullivan's shoulders, her movements gentle and sure. "See? I told you we'd make it to the park," she said, her eyes sparkling. Sullivan chuckled softly, his voice still weak but warm. "You never doubted, did you?" Ivy shook her head, her gaze steady. "Not for a second." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small braid of dried flowers, placing it in his hand. "My mom taught me how to make these. It's for you, a reminder that we're here, together." Sullivan looked at the delicate braid, his eyes misting over. "Ivy," he said quietly, "you've given me more than I ever thought possible." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to keep my promise. The children in the square, we'll help them. Together." Ivy's face lit up, her heart swelling with joy. "Together," she echoed, leaning her head against his shoulder. As they sat there, watching the first buds of spring unfold, the world felt lighter, filled with the quiet certainty that their shared journey was far from over. Their story spread beyond the hospital walls, touching hearts in the community. Inspired by Sullivan's sacrifice and Ivy's unwavering faith, local businesses and residents rallied to support the children in the square, setting up food drives and shelters. Sullivan, true to his word, used his resources to fund a permanent program, ensuring no child would go hungry. Ivy, by his side, became a voice for those who had none, her story a beacon of hope. Years later, the park bench where they'd sat that spring day bore a small plaque, asterisk for Ivy and Sullivan, whose kindness saved more than lives. Asterisk it stood as a quiet tribute to a bond forged in sacrifice, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, love and selflessness could light the way. And as Ivy and Sullivan walked through the park each spring, hand in hand, they carried with them the legacy of their promise, a world made brighter, one act of kindness at a time.